being here at our special board meeting this morning. Since this is our first meeting of the day, I'd like to ask Metro's Chief Safety Officer, Teresa Empasado, to provide us with this morning's safety contact before we begin the meeting. Ms. Empasado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. When discussing suicide prevention, it's a delicate topic, and understanding the issues relating to suicide and mental health is vital. Helping others requires engagement and awareness of warning signs and taking action when someone is in crisis. When we discuss mental health and suicide, Metro employees and customers should be aware of their own, as well as their friends and family members' mental health. Engagement starts with knowing the signs. These can include withdrawal, uncontrolled anger, increased use of alcohol, talking about wanting to die or committing suicide, as well as making plans and giving away possessions. If you observe warning signs, take action and engage with the person. Tap local and national resources to prepare for the conversation and let them know that suicide is not inevitable. Provide directional support and resources and help them create a safety plan. When using the Metro system, customers should watch for anyone lingering near where the train enters the station or remaining on the platform and not boarding a train. Anyone entering the roadway, hanging over the edge of the platform, or going beyond the end gates. If you observe any suspicious behavior in the Metro system or believe a customer is experiencing a mental health crisis, contact a station manager, the Metro Transit Police Department, or other Metro personnel as soon as possible. For additional information regarding suicide prevention, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by calling 1-800-273-8255 or by visiting suicidepreventionlifeline.org. This contact information is posted at the end of every Metro Rail platform. Thank you, and this concludes our safety contact for the day.
Thank you, Teresa. Now I'll ask Ms. Ellison, the Board Corporate Secretary, to please call the roll. Ms. Ellison.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair Babers.
Present.
Alternate Director Zappi.
Present.
Director Klein.
Present.
Director Letourneau.
Present.
Director Lowe.
Present.
Director Drummer.
Present.
Alternate Director Helfer.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. First, we have approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, I'd like to move approval of the agenda as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of formalizing the announcement the board made 2 days ago to appoint Mr. Randy S. Clark as Metro's next General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Clark currently serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Capital Metro in Austin, Texas, a position he has held since 2018. Prior to his time in Austin, Mr. Clark worked as the Vice President for Member Services and Operations at the American Public Transportation Association and worked at the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority in Boston in roles including Deputy Chief Operating Officer and Chief Safety Officer. On behalf of the board, I want to express how excited we are for Mr. Clark to join us when his term begins in late summer of this year. He'll build on the legacy of improvements in safety and service reliability that Mr. Wiedefeld created at Metro and help us deliver the great service that riders and the region deserve. I would also like to thank my colleagues on the board and especially those who served on the executive committee for the search. Ms. Babers, Mr. Drummer, and Ms. Klein for the thoughtfulness and professionalism they brought to the process. Now I am pleased to move approval of Mr. Clark's appointment as the GM, CEO, and his contract, the details of which have been posted online. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Babers. All right, would any board members like to make any comments before we have a vote? If so, would you please raise your hand? Matt, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank you for the work that you have done to lead the board during this search process. which was very different than previous search processes at Metro, and also my colleagues on the executive committee. At the end, the board had excellent choices to choose from to be our next GM. And I believe that Randy is the right person to lead Metro in the future. What I'm most excited about is his energy, his enthusiasm. It's very clear that Randy really wants to be here in Washington. He wants to lead Metro. He considers this an attractive job and a job with challenges that he's excited to tackle. So I believe that we're making an excellent choice, and I look forward very much to working with Randy as we tackle all of our challenges that we know we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else like to make any comments? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Ellison, please call the roll.
Chair Smedberg,
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers,
Aye.
Mr. Zappi,
Aye.
Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Dr. Lowe,
Aye.
Mr. Drummer,
Aye.
Dr. Helfer.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you so much to the board. I'd also like to thank Ms. Ellison, Ms. Lee, and Ms. Rossborough for their help throughout this process as well as Mr. Greg Mosier with the consulting firm Krautheimer Associates, who helped us throughout this process. So thank you to all of you. And thank you for making the announcement day so successful as well. So I appreciate that. Next, we'll move on to the appointment of the interim general manager CEO. Since Mr. Clark's term as general manager won't begin until late this summer, and Mr. Wiedefeld has announced his intention to retire June 30th, the board also needs to appoint an interim general manager CEO who will lead the agency through the transition period. I am pleased to announce that the board has selected Mr. Andy Oth, Metro's current Executive Vice President for Capital Program Delivery, to serve as Metro's interim GM CEO. While Mr. Wiedefeld retains all authority during the period throughout the tenure through June 30th, Mr. Oth's term as interim GM will become effective beginning today and will last until the start date of the new CEO or GM CEO to ensure a smooth transition, the transfer of knowledge and continuity of operations. Working closely with Mr. Wiedefeld and the board, Andy will immediately begin to develop transition documents, identifying strategic partnerships and resource opportunities important for Metro's continued success. Therefore, I move approval of the appointment of Mr. Andy Oth as Metro's interim GM CEO. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms.
Rhina Helfer.
Rhina, Ms. Heffer. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ellis.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
yes,
sorry, I was trying to get my hand up quickly.
Yeah.
Just a brief comment. We have many candidates that are able to fulfill this role in the interim, but Andy's been leading our work in particular on finishing the Silver Line, which is a priority for both of us and all of the board. And so knowing the challenges that we'll face this summer as we work to get that project done and the negotiation that's taking place, it's all the more reason why Andy is a great choice to be our interim GM. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. All right, seeing no other hands, Ms. Ellison, please call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg,
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers,
Aye.
Mr. Zappi,
Aye.
Ms. Klein,
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Dr. Lowe,
Aye.
Mr. Drummer,
Aye.
Dr. Helfer.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to Mr. Oth. We very much look forward to working with you. With no further business to come before the board, we will stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Drummer to begin the Safety and Operations Committee meeting. Mr. Drummer, good morning.
Thank you, Chair Smedberg, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Operations Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of the minutes of our April 28th meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. Today, we have two information updates before the committee. We'll start with an update on Metro's performance through the third quarter of fiscal year 2022 in the context of measurable goals and targets. In the second update, our Chief Safety Officer will discuss voluntary safety reporting as a key component of our safety management system. I'll now turn the floor over to Mr. Leader and Ms. Impastato to begin the performance review.
Thank you, Chair Drummer. If I could share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, good morning, Chair Drummer, to all board members and staff. Each quarter, Metro provides the board with a report on performance against targets for safety and service reliability performance measures. This is the report for quarters 1 through 3, FY22, which covers July 2021, March of 2022. These measures here evaluate how well we are delivering our mission to provide safe, equitable, reliable, and cost-effective public transportation, and how well we are meeting the standards the board has set for safety and service. Back in July 2021, we established targets for these measures. Within Metro, we use these performance measures to inform decision-making. Many of the measures here align with the federal government reporting requirements. The remaining measures are standards in the industry used to evaluate customer experience. Full list of performance measures and their definitions is available in the appendix of the public-facing report on our website. For quarter 3 of FY22, Metro met or exceeded target for 13 of the 18 performance measures presented here today. The 5 measures that did not meet target are employee injury rate, reportable bus collisions, Metro Rail customer on-time performance, available track, and customer satisfaction. Later, I will provide more details about the actions we are taking to improve performance in these areas. Total ridership in FY22 to date was better than our budgeted forecast and an improvement over FY21, but still below pre-COVID levels. We are seeing riders return sooner than we projected as offices are reopening and regional events and attractions such as the cherry blossoms, sporting events, and general tourism are adding to leisure travel trips. While we are not at pre-COVID levels, we are experiencing a faster return than we thought, and it has continued beyond March. Metro Bus continues to have consistently higher ridership than rail. 60% of customer trips on our system are on Metro Bus and 40% on Metro Rail, a reversal of pre-pandemic ridership trends. During quarter 3, bus ridership dropped in January due to the Omicron wave, forcing bus to reduce service levels. However, once service was restored in February, ridership climbed steadily, and in March, it reached levels similar to September and October of last year. Rail ridership also dropped in January and February, likely due to Omicron, but jumped to 5.8 million in March, the highest we have seen since the start of the pandemic. Cherry blossom season and other spring activities brought large crowds of visitors, which contributed to the increase. Additionally, we saw increases during traditional weekday peak periods, especially Tuesday through Thursdays, as hybrid office workers are returning. Average weekday rail ridership approached 230,000, with 280,000 riders for bus. We would like to share some information about service improvements in Q3. For Metro Rail, we improved service levels in February to 10 minutes on the red line and 20 minutes on all other lines. In March, we also started placing gap trains strategically throughout the system to help with crowding during busier times. Beginning May 2nd, we further increased frequencies on the green and yellow line to 15 minutes, down from 20 minutes. We chose these lines for service improvements to mitigate crowding due to high ridership, especially during peak periods. And finally, the FY23 budget, which the board approved in March, doubles service to 5 minutes on the red line and 10 minutes on all other lines during weekday peak. For Metro Bus, we temporarily reduced service in January due to COVID-related employee absences stemming from Omicron. We restored this service in February. Additionally, the approved FY23 budget makes several service improvements permanent, such as our frequent service network changes implemented last September. As you can see in the graph, crowding is infrequent when looking across the entire system at all hours of the day. During the third quarter, crowding dropped in January and February as ridership fell during Omicron. However, as ridership returned in March, we began to see acute crowding during peak hours. On Metro Bus, crowding levels continue to be monitored and considered when creating our schedules. On Metro Rail, we had enough trains to add additional trips in the most crowded directions and times. This has successfully lowered crowding below the thresholds. Note that during Q2, the increase in crowding in October followed the grounding of the 7000 series railcar fleet in the aftermath of the derailment on October 12th. As Metro Rail added more trains, overcrowding improved in November and December, and crowding fell in January and February as ridership dropped off again due to Omicron. Our crime target was met with just under 6 crimes per million passenger trips, compared to the target of no more than 8. The FY22 crime rate through Q3 was 30% lower than the same period last year. Crimes against property have returned to pre-pandemic levels and are the main reason for the improvement in the crime rate. Crimes against persons remain elevated relative to pre-pandemic rates. On average, there have been 18 crimes against persons per month in FY22, the majority of which are on Metro Rail. On April 28th, Metro announced several new initiatives that we are taking to address the crime. We will increase patrols to introduce a higher visibility presence across the system, which will help deter crime. We are also introducing QR codes with contact information on signage across the system that our customers can scan, which will allow them to more easily call our MTPD tip hotline. In May, we will be launching an anti-harassment public awareness campaign. We will also be holding community events at stations with food and activities where officers can interact with neighborhood residents one-on-one. And finally, MTPD is developing partnerships with community resources to help those who are homeless or in a mental health crisis. New youth programs and initiatives will also be launched. And now I will turn the presentation over to Teresa Imprasado, our Chief Safety Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Customer injuries on bus, rail, and metro access met target thus far in fiscal year 2022. The target was set to improve 15% over fiscal year 21 performance results. Through March of fiscal year 22, the main type of injuries continue to be slips, trips, and falls in the rail system, and collision-related injuries on bus and metro access, the majority of which are classified as non-preventable collisions, which means that during the investigation into the incident, it was determined that the operator could not have done anything to prevent the collision from occurring. We continue to invest in station modernization improvements and collision avoidance technologies, as well as enhancing the conduct of employee training regarding operational safety. Our investments include reduction of hazards that result in slips, trips, and falls in our stations, such as upgrading our platforms with slip-resistant tile. And on our bus system, we're advancing procurement of collision avoidance technologies such as blind spot warnings and object detection, which is likely to lower the number of falls while the bus is in motion due to hard braking. As our Metro Access fleet incorporates sedans, we are also implementing related training on parking and assisting customers to maximize safety, as these methods of operation differ than those with vans. Metro Access also has updated our drive cam units, adding behavioral recognition and alerting capability, and we continue to engage an occupational therapist to address assistance-related injuries. The services has also implemented a revised local safety committee process with our Metro Access contract service providers that's more fully aligned with Metro's SMS in order to more proactively identify and address risks. Next slide, please. Both rail and bus employee injuries did not meet target for fiscal year 22 to date, which was set to maintain a baseline average of the prior 2 years. More hours on the job as we've emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic is a risk factor for all types of injuries. Of note, Metro bus employee injuries fell 25% in Q3, partly due to reduced service levels in January as a result of the Omicron virus surge. Rail employee injury rate, however, was particularly high in winter months. This correlated with increased employee overtime needed to support severe weather events, COVID-19 absences, and additional actions requiring work related to the sidelining of the 7000 series train sets. In addition, the increase in crime across the region has impacted Metro staff. Similar to the trends the nation's seeing with other transportation professionals, our frontline staff are increasingly threatened or assaulted by passengers or individuals occupying the Metro system, and frequently witness adjacent violence and crimes, with over 150 incidences just within this year. We continue to take several actions to improve performance listed here, such as conducting de-escalation training, leveraging our employee assistance program, holding internal safety campaigns, and spearheading a number of mental health intervention processes with our occupational health and wellness team. We'd like to particularly report that through Q3, 75% of Metro's rail station managers have completed de-escalation training, which is also now a regular part of the station manager refresher class. Next slide, please. Although falling just short of target at 3.5 collisions per million miles compared to the target of 3.4, the rate of National Transit Database bus collision reports has been steadily improving throughout the fiscal year. Given that almost 70% of Metro's collisions are non-preventable, traffic is a key driver. According to the MWCOG, traffic has returned to about 90% of pre-pandemic levels in the areas that Metrobus serves. Metro continues to utilize the data collected from our drive cams and accident investigations to identify risky behavior and coach our staff. We are also mapping all collisions to identify any hotspots and working proactively with jurisdictions to address hazards. There were no NTD reportable rail collisions that occurred in Q3 of fiscal year 2022. Based on a reconciliation exercise conducted with the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission, or the WMSC, there were 3 reportable collisions discovered in Q1 and Q2 that had not been identified in previous Metro Rail report outs. 2 collisions were related to roadway maintenance machines. The 3rd collision occurred when a train contacted a bump post when being parked overnight at a rail yard. None of these collisions involved trains with passengers. Staff continue to address the causal factors identified from the investigations of the 3 events in 2022, which indicate failure to follow procedures, improper storage, as well as human error. The target for red signal overruns was aggressively set to improve 50% over fiscal year 20 to 21 performance, and I'm pleased to say that we are meeting this goal. There have been no red signal overruns since November, and our efforts to address human factors causing red signal overruns continue to be effective and are being actively monitored to assure continuous improvement. Next slide, please. The target for fires was set to improve 18% over the average performance over the past 2 years. And I'm also pleased to say that we are meeting target. There were 31 National Transit Database reportable fires through Q3 of fiscal year 22. Of the 31 fires this fiscal year, 65% were non-electrical, for example, related to debris. This is a 43% increase relative to last year and is likely related to an increase in ridership. As more people are riding the metro system, more combustible material is generated, thus increasing the risk of fire. About a third of fires are due to arcing insulator events. Water, brake dust, and debris are the main drivers of insulator or track component fires, and Metro continues to replace insulators in trouble areas and regularly clean track beds to remove debris as well as dust, water, and combustible materials. There have been no derailments since the 2 in October. And with that, I will return the presentation to Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Teresa. Metro Rail customer on-time performance fell short of target, largely due to reduced service levels and longer wait times since the 7000 series was removed from service in October. Rail OTP before the derailment was 91.5%, just shy of target. During Q3, OTP dipped in January to 67%, spiked by winter weather events and limited rail car availability. OTP improved to 75% by March. This is the highest since October and corresponds to the increased train frequencies on all lines as Metro returned the 6000 series cars to service. Targets for fleet reliability aim for a 5% improvement over a 3-year average. Railcar reliability exceeded target through Q3 of FY22 thanks to a strong performance during the first quarter when the 7000 series rail cars were in service. Although critical safety issues have resulted in the fleet being removed from service, this series is overall less prone to brake, door, propulsion, and other failures that occur more commonly in our legacy fleets. After the 7000 series were sidelined in mid-October, 85% of the service has been provided by the 2000 and 3000 series rail cars, which are almost 40 years old and approaching the end of their useful life. These fleets have been performing around 20,000 miles between failure during Q2 and Q3, which is the best performance they have delivered in decades. This is the result of stronger inspection and maintenance practices and engineering programs to address failure and prone components. The bus target for FY22 is 77%, 1 point increase over the average performance of the previous 2 years. Bus has consistently reached target across FY22 to date. Note that due to the temporary service changes in January, we do not have reliable data from January 1 through February 6, so the results here exclude this period. Bus on-time performance correlates strongly with regional traffic. Performance is worse during the PM period and is worse overall on Fridays and Saturdays. The bus transportation team is developing strategies to focus on all aspects of OTP within their control, such as ensuring buses depart yards on time and that they do not depart from the terminal stations early. To speak briefly on the impact of the trucker convoy on the bus OTP, because the convoy was limited to the Beltway thanks to the efforts by the jurisdictions, impacts were minimal. On any given day, it impacted less than 15 routes, which is 7% of all routes. While there were temporary delays on these routes, it had minimal impact service-wide. OTP on March 21st, the day most impacted by the convoy, was 78% above the average for the month. In terms of bus fleet reliability, bus continues to have strong performance in FY22, performing above target every month so far this year. Results reflect our well-established bus replacement and midlife overhaul programs. The clean diesel fleet has been steadily replaced over the past 2 years as they approach the end of their 15-year useful life, and these newest buses are our strongest performers. As a reminder, Metro Access fleet on-time performance factors in the number of Metro Access vehicles arriving at their designated pickup location with a 30-minute on-time window. For example, if I'm scheduled to be picked up at 12:15, my pickup is on time if the vehicle arrives between noon and 12:30. Through quarter three, performance greatly exceeded target, which was set at the FY21 performance level of 90%. Metro Access fleet reliability also had a strong performance through quarter three of FY22 at over 22.3 thousand miles between failure, exceeding the target of 21,000 miles. Metro Access has sustained high levels of reliability by consistently replacing vans at the end of their useful life. As a reminder, available track follows FTA guidance for measuring guideway conditions. It is the percentage of our system under a performance restriction at a set snapshot in time each month. The target reflects Metro's projections for planned and unplanned outages throughout the year. Through quarter three of FY22, 5% of our track was under performance restriction, missing our target of 3.9%. The vast majority of track under restriction, almost 4% of the 5%, was due to planned major capital projects. These are key investments we are making to keep the system in a state of good repair. This 3.8% is mostly made up of the Green Line platform improvement project and the recently concluded canopy installation on the upper red line. Through quarter three of FY22, elevator and escalator availability has consistently met target. To ensure we continue to provide high levels of availability for our customers, Metro is continuing our investments in equipment rehabs and replacements, with an additional 23 units scheduled to be replaced or rehabbed in the remainder of FY22. Despite increases in downtime due to planned capital work, elevator and escalator availability continue to exceed target due to increases in the average time between failure, as well as stronger turnaround times in getting escalators up and running. And finally, customer satisfaction measure looks at the percent of respondents to our customer survey who rated their last trip on Metro bus or rail within the previous 30 days as satisfactory. Customer satisfaction was high on both bus and rail during the first quarter, reaching 91% for rail and 87% for bus. These results reflected low crowding across the system, good all-day frequent service, and strong reliability. Satisfaction fell in the second and third quarters of FY22 as service frequencies were cut due to the October derailment and the COVID-related operator shortages in January. In quarter three, customer satisfaction was 68% on rail and 64% on bus. And this concludes the presentation, and Teresa and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Leader and Ms. Impastato. And to our Metro staff and to our frontline workforce, we really appreciate your commitment, your proactive work, and your performance under our extremely challenging conditions that we face, especially that they've been pretty severe compared to the last 10 years. And we just appreciate the efforts as we move forward. And we won't take our foot off the gas as we press forward. If anyone has any comments, I see a number of hands raised, and I'll start with Ms. Lowe.
Hi, I've got a bunch of questions, so let's just go through them one by one. I'd like to start on slide 4, which shows our service. This is the service that we have planned and budgeted. And I just want total clarity that we can't actually deliver this level of service without the 7Ks. And so this is budgeted for, it's planned, but it's contingent on getting the 7Ks back. Is that correct?
Correct. It will be a phased approach as we begin to install the various. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Mr. Leader, I really think we do also need to just pause and congratulate you and the team for what you are doing during this difficult time with the 2 and 3 case. I
Thank you.
mean, I salute you and the team. The statistics you just shared are extraordinary. I mean, I think it's putting it politely to say that they're near the end of their useful life. And I mean, this is heroic work here to keep these on the tracks. And I mean, I'll just say as a rider, I appreciate it, but as a board member, I appreciate it too. Thank you and the team very much.
No, I will make sure the team gets it. Thank you.
And I just want to recognize how extraordinary it is. I mean, it's, it would have been reasonable to say it's not possible. And, that all this is happening and with safety fully in mind is it's really great. Moving to slide 5. As I'm reading this looks to, I may be reading this wrong, and is crowding on buses, it's happening, and it's actually worse than the Metro rail crowding at the moment. Am I
Yes,
reading?
but it's still a very low percentage.
Exactly. It's low. So we have some, I know we have something we can do that we're trying to do about Metro rail crowding, that we've got some 6Ks that we're rehabbing back in, and that we can send to deal with that. Do we need to do anything about crowding on buses? Do we have options there?
Well, what we do is we take the extra board and the buses that we have kept aside for an emergency, with bus operators during the day for, breakdowns in operations. What we look to do is where we start to see the crowding at certain time slots, we will now begin to schedule a bus to go in service, just similar to what we're doing on the rail side. So our planning team is constantly looking at where the crowding is, at what time it is, and then we put in special trippers so that we can reduce the amount of crowding. So we'll continue to monitor this on both Metro Bus and Metro Rail.
Okay. Do we have the human capital to do this right now? How are we on drivers?
We're doing very well. I mean, we still have vacancies. Sick rate is slightly up compared to where I would normally be pre-pandemic, but we are nowhere near where we were back in December and January of last year. So I have to say it's a very healthy workforce right now.
Okay, that is reassuring. And then on the next slide, I had raised with staff a few months ago that I didn't think enough people knew about the text tip line and how to contact MTPD. So I just want to say thank you for these efforts, the anti-harassment public awareness campaign and QR codes on signage. I think this is exactly what we need, because text tips is like, it just escalates situations within the systems. If people think they have to call, someone and speak out loud in order to get help. I myself just yesterday encountered some criminal activity in the system, and I sent a text to text tips, and someone responded right away. It was incredible. So I really appreciate that we're going to let people know about this important resource. I want to thank MTPD for being so responsive.
Thank you.
Thank you, MTPD. I didn't write down the slide number, or slide 8. These trends obviously are going in the wrong direction. I understand that there's a lot going on out there in the world, and that WMATA is a microcosm of the world, and we are not tasked with fixing the world. But I feel like I've heard the de-escalation thing, these are the things that we're trying, but it's what we're trying is, I'm wondering if can we brainstorm any other ways to get these down. I am imagining what it must be like to be a bus driver right now, to have a job where you think there's a more than 1 in 10 chance, where you have a data-driven reason to think there's a more than 1 in 10 chance that you're going to experience an assault or witness a crime. I mean, that is really stressful.
No,
So-
I agree with you. One of the things we're doing right now under the program that I started back, I think around 2017, is we do what we call sprints. So we're in a process of doing a nine-week sprint with everybody in the coup organization. What we did was we worked with Teresa's team to identify where the highest risk or the highest injuries or incidents, it could have been operational incidents, what was, what stood out between, my group and Teresa's group. And we had the groups come together in this last 9 weeks to begin working on that small area. I think we have to take little small steps at, solving some of the issues, because you can't just tackle it all at once. I think on the bus operator front, the majority of the, of the injury rate is, from altercations with customers as well as, bus accidents, and we do get a lot of non-preventable accidents that our operators, are injured from, and we're working on it as well. So we are in week 8 of that sprint. Next week is the last week. I will be meeting with the leadership team. I believe there's one area, Archer, that we're going to probably continue the sprint because we did not like the progress that was made there. And then with the other groups, we're going to see how we can monitor and maintain what they have done so far, and then look to see what we can do at maybe looking at other areas of safety or operational incidents.
And if I may, the pretty disturbing and alarming trend with regard to assaults and personal security incidents that we've been experiencing is something that we are working in an integrated approach with communities and jurisdictions to address as well. It's pretty clear that the solution to these problems does not rest entirely within Metro's span of control. So we've proactively created a civilian division within our police department to engage with communities and identify avenues towards performing interventionary work, referrals for public health services and mental health services, as well as working to target these interventions in a cohesive, collaborative, and integrated manner.
Yeah, okay, what I'll just say for now is I totally appreciate and respect that both of you take this really seriously and are doing everything that you can. I guess I want to flag for myself, for my board colleagues, for everyone that it's still not enough. This trend is going in the wrong direction, and we need to do something about this. I know that at the next board meeting, we're going to talk about fare evasion. And I think that, all this stuff is interconnected. And fare evasion is probably related to the very poor fare box recovery performance metric that we saw for bus in this report as well. I want us to get into the literature and to the strategies that other systems are using to identify holistic, non-confrontational strategies that have worked for other systems to address, multiple of these issues at the same time. I know that this means like more for people who are already doing all that they can, but I think that we need to make this a priority and figure out how to do more. So I hope that we will talk about this at the next board meeting as well. And then I think there may be other things that we can do, like is the divider between I know we added the little door between the plastic shield between the driver and the rest of the bus. Is it big enough, et cetera? Like, let's brainstorm everything to find more things that we can do, because we need to stabilize this, and then we need to get the trend going the other way. I think that's my last question. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Ms. Helfer.
Thanks. And thanks, Joe and Teresa. Really just building a little bit on what Dr. Lowe had mentioned about the employee piece. I'm wondering just how we're engaging employees, how we're getting their feedback, how they're feeling as we work on strategies that we're also working on their mental health, and they're feeling good about coming to work. Are there efforts going on in that scenario?
Absolutely. So we are currently working through our series of local safety committees to engage our frontline staff and solicit their feedback, both in brainstorming sessions if they have ideas for opportunities for us to enhance their safety or the efficacy of existing programs, as well as their feedback on their personal experience. In those local safety committees, we're also talking about the existing programs that we have for employee assistance and the task force that we've created with our occupational health and wellness efforts to include trauma interventionary services, so that our employees are proactively approached in the event that they have an on-duty traumatic experience. That task force has been working with public health experts, as well as performing a pretty extensive literature review and benchmarking activity to identify opportunities for trauma interventionary services that have been successful, both domestically and globally. We've benchmarked with Canadian authorities, as well as some federal response agencies for first responders to identify the most effective ways to care for our employees should they be engaged in or directly witness a critical stress event.
Thanks. And you know, I agree that, you know, it's a multi-tiered approach, and appreciate the opportunity to continue down that path of figuring out multiple strategies that both support our employees and protect our employees and the public. I think everyone's aware that I've been working with the Rider Advisory Committee, and one of the things that has recently come up is while masks are not required during COVID, are there opportunities for people that want to wear masks? You know, somebody had suggested, can we have a mask only car, like a quiet car is on like on the Amtrak? Has that been considered? I'm just curious.
So that is something that we're actively looking into. We've benchmarked and talked to New Jersey Transit, who are also looking into a mask only car. We do have some concerns that have been identified around enforcement of the mask only car and how that could potentially create conflict amongst our customers. The quiet car has a pretty storied history of having some conflict there and needing some attention. But we are absolutely looking into it, and we are targeting our messaging to our staff and to our customers to remind them that the lack of an enforcement mechanism through the TSA on the mask mandate does not mean that Metro is not advocating for wearing a mask. We've updated our messaging, and we are still making masks fully accessible to our bus and rail riders, and we will continue to do so indefinitely. But definitely things we're looking at and trying to identify feasibility and opportunities for pilot programs or other trials.
Thanks. And then thank you again for getting all that information out to riders, you know, so that they can feel safe on the system. So, and all of the other safety measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryna. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer. Just quickly, I am also really concerned about the operator assault issue. All right, of course, somebody calling the home phone at the moment. Joe, is there any sort of, I understand, as others have said, this is not just about Metro, but is there any indication as to reasons why in particular this is happening in terms of the increased assaults?
Well, I think all transit properties are seeing it. I think that had a lot to do with that first requirement of the mask. Some of these assaults are not all physical assaults. They could be verbal assaults or being threatened, and the operator is shook up. So I just want to let everybody know that it doesn't mean that the operator was absolutely physically assaulted. But what we saw is an uptick, I think, during the pandemic. We believe it had a lot to do with mental illness issues Where, you know, I think at one point, customers were not getting their medicine, were not getting the treatment they needed, and were coming on board. And that led to, you know, altercations, not only with our bus operators, but with our customers. So I think as we come out of the pandemic and the mask mandate is down and people start getting the help they need, and we're trying to do that through the police department. In fact, the other day, I had a woman on a train that I was on that needed some mental intervention, and I was able to get a police officer to help her. And that's what we're trying to do here at Washington Metro. So, but I think all the other agencies are seeing a very similar trend.
Okay. Speaking of, that was going to be my next question actually about police. Do we have any resource issues there just in terms of head count and, I mean, vacancies? I think we do have a very high vacancy rate at transit police, which I'm sure is stretching us thin.
Correct. We do. We're working on that. Well, about a year ago, or a little bit about probably more like 2 years ago, we brought a third party on to help us with our advertising. And we're starting to see the class sizes grow. But part of the issue is we can only have so many classes per year because they have to go through Virginia, Maryland, and then here. So it's a little bit difficulty. But I think in the next couple, we're hoping the next class that's going to be going in, which I believe will start in July, will be in the 20s. And that will be the biggest class that I've seen since I've been here in 6 years.
Okay. And then the last thing, more on the financial metrics. So the cost per riders numbers are kind of stunning, really high. Obviously on access, it's extraordinarily high. But even on our other modes, it's pretty high. On bus, you know, our ridership is still not what it was, but it's, you know, it's decent. I mean, we've seen higher numbers. I assume on rail, you know, the more riders we have, the more that number gets driven down because we basically have fixed expenses, and it's just a matter of spreading it out amongst higher people, more people. Is that the case on access as well, or does that work a little differently?
It is a very expensive area. I mean, I know we have put in programs to try and curtail expenses as much as possible. So I know Christian Blake is doing a good job as much as he can to try and draw that number down. But I think from an industry standpoint, Metro Access is one of the most expensive modes of transportation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the number in front of me. As I recall, it's something like $150 a ride. You almost think you could provide somebody with a private, you know, outside transportation mode much cheaper than that.
Yes.
So I think that's something we really need to drill down on a little bit.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ms. Babers?
Good morning, everyone. And Joe and Teresa, thank you for that presentation. And thanks to my board members for all of your questions, because I got a lot of good feedback from your questions. I just have one question on slide 10, which talked about the fires. And I know that you all said that debris, there are a lot of debris related fires. So how do we address that? I mean, are we talking about, I know we're talking about debris that gets onto the actual tracks. And so that debris, I'm assuming, is starting on the platform and getting blown or pushed. I mean, do we see increased cleaning? Do we see station managers walking the platform to make sure that the big pieces are collected? How do we look at addressing that?
Well, we do have a track cleaning program where we have a set schedule. Sometimes it needs to be adjusted. We have some stations that get probably more debris on the track than they should. So we are addressing it. But I can tell you some of these non-electrical fires are not all on the track. They could be in the platform area. They could be in outside the station, but on our property and stuff like that. Most of those are because of smoking. And we get a lot of canister fires as well. So we We could probably break it down a little bit better. For this slide, we didn't do it, but not all of it is on the track bed,
Okay.
just to let you know, okay? So it's not in the tunnels.
All right. That's good to know. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair Drummer.
Thank you, Ms. Babers. I do have one final question. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. And my question is, we're speaking in terms of 18 performance metrics. Is there an initiative in place, or do we consider adding to those performance metrics? And who's driving this? Is this something that is driven by outside agencies, or did we select these 18 categories that we track?
We actually track a lot more than these 18, but these are the 18 that traditionally most properties report out on. Like again, before I said, some of it is based on FTA requirements, and others are just on customer satisfaction. So these are the 18 that we have traditionally reported out on. But from my stat meetings that I have in my entire COO organization, we actually track a lot more than just these.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lowe, did you raise your hand again?
I did. Sorry, your question just made me think of one more question. Mr. Leader, and this is not time sensitive, but just hearing that you're tracking more things, one thing that I think would be cool to track is if we, as we move forward with bus priority and dedicated bus lanes and things like that, the district's got like 15 projects in the pipe right now. Like, this is really going to start to be like a thing. Mm-hmm. Could we, it does, there's only so much you can put in this report, but if you guys are tracking other stuff, one thing that I'd love to take a look at as we get somewhere with that is to separate bus lanes that have priority treatments and bus lanes that don't. And then we already have this bus on time performance metric here in the report. So we just to calculate that metric, but for these two separate groups. And it'd be great to do that, to do it now so that we have like a baseline so that we can see if there's any change. Could we take a look at that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe
Fantastic.
we already have some stats on it, especially when we did the pilot in DC and areas. So we could definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, and that's something I'd love for us to just kind of be tracking so that we can see the change, because we also need to know if there isn't any change, and if we need to make sure that these projects are, delivering the results that we hope for. So I'd love to see the data, and I'd love for us to be tracking it the same way that we're tracking the top level bus on time performance metric.
Okay, very good. No wonder that the screen disappeared on me. Sorry, Teresa. All right, I'll shut up and turn it over to you, Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, we'll move to the second update with Ms. Impastato.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation will review Metro's voluntary safety reporting program and our efforts to improve and expand participation in the program. Metro has proudly led the industry in developing a suite of options for employees to report safety concerns, including a safety hotline that is staffed by a safety department representative 24/7, 365 to address immediate concerns and issues, as well as online and email options. Metro also has developed a confidential close call reporting system staffed by third-party data brokers to assure confidentiality, which adopts many of the best practices associated with similar programs in the railroad and aviation industries. In the spirit of continuous improvement, Metro's internal quality improvement team has performed assessments of these programs to identify opportunities for improvement, to increase utilization, to enhance our transparency and tracking of issues. Metro has prioritized implementing these corrective actions in our 2022 SMS roadmap. Metro's safety hotline averages roughly 350 reports each year over the last 5 years of its existence. Many of these reports involve conditions and security concerns, which enable Metro staff to rapidly respond to issues. Safety hotline calls are answered by safety department staff who will assess the concerns, respond to the location of the condition, and ensure immediate actions are taken to address the conditions and preserve the safety of the system if necessary. Safety staff will then refer the issues to the appropriate party within Metro to effect permanent corrective actions and regularly follow up to ensure that actions are implemented and repairs or other mitigations have been completed. Common rail station reports include observed water intrusion during rainy days and uneven surfaces that can create tripping hazards. Common employee safety reports include COVID-19 related concerns and the potential for assaults, especially amongst the population of our bus operators. Over the past 2 years, Metro staff have worked to improve the response to issues, and we've reduced the time to close concerns from many months to an average of 14 days. We're continuing to identify opportunities to reduce the time to close reports and are developing enhanced tracking mechanisms and transparent reports to staff to follow the dispositioning of their reported issues. While Metro's confidential close call reporting program operates in the spirit of other close call reporting programs in aviation and heavy rail industries, there are substantive differences between the programs. Metro's internal audit, which included benchmarking against these other programs, identified significant opportunities to improve focus and utilization of the confidential close call reporting program. This program seeks to identify unintended outcomes and procedural escapes, which can lead to close calls or near-miss incidents. In other words, incidents in which serious consequences could have been, but fortunately were not, experienced. Employees directly involved in close call or near-miss incidents are encouraged to call or go online to report the incident to an independent third-party data broker who will assure confidentiality of their reporter and will gather information about the incident. The third party will properly anonymize the reports to protect confidentiality of their reporter. And these reports are then sent to peer review teams comprised of frontline staff and subject matter experts, as well as labor representatives, for a multi-factor root cause analysis. The peer review teams then tender recommendations to prevent similar incidents to Metro's management team for action. These recommendations could include procedural changes, enhancements to training and instructions, and modifications to engineered systems. Currently, Metro's program averages 3 to 4 reports per month, many of which are focused on conditions, which is far below the reporting rate of high reliability organizations with similar programs. We are working to implement the corrective actions of our internal reviews this year. As noted at our last briefing, which focused on safety culture, our partnership with MITRE is a multi-year effort, which has been a cornerstone of our strategy to become the transit industry leader in safety. We're working with MITRE to review the improvements that we are currently making to our voluntary safety reporting program and to identify additional opportunities to enhance our programs in the future. Our partnership will leverage MITRE's experience to advance our safety culture, improve our voluntary safety reporting program, and enhance our safety data analytics. Making the transition from historical safety programs to a safety management system can be compared to using a road atlas versus using GPS navigation. Of course, the concept of safety risk management is not new, just like finding one's way on a road trip is not new. But having the ability to anticipate road hazards and make course corrections proactively is a relatively new concept. SMS is comparable to a GPS navigation system for safety. By developing a better understanding of the safety risks you're facing, action can be taken before those incidents occur. How does a GPS know that there's a road hazard ahead? The majority of that information is reported by the users actually on the road. Similarly, the fuel for an SMS comes primarily from our frontline workforce. Therefore, having an integrated, robust voluntary safety reporting program is foundational to driving the transition from a traditionally reactive safety program to more proactive safety management systems. Metro's existing safety reporting systems contain a reserve of safety data that currently sits untapped in independent systems. Comparative and advanced analytics of this data are difficult to perform under current siloed systems. Our efforts with MITRE will assist in guiding Metro to make improvements to our portfolio of safety reporting mechanisms by unifying the data associated with these reports into a secure data lake, and will apply the expertise of MITRE utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning models to the newly fused data in order to identify patterns and trends that would otherwise go undetected in our reporting and incidents. Metro will then work with MITRE's experts to provide operational context to the analyses, which will enable Metro to identify actionable intelligence to improve safety and reduce risk. This will also enable Metro to proactively identify potential safety concerns before an incident has occurred, enabling effective interventions to take place. This process will be iterative and unending. As Metro improves our safety culture and our reporting, we will continue to identify opportunities to improve the safety of our system. Improving the utilization of our programs, fusing the data streams, and applying advanced analytical tools to our data will inform our future decision-making and enable Metro to target safety interventions to maximize positive impact. This will support our journey toward becoming a high reliability organization. The success of our voluntary safety reporting program is inextricably linked to Metro's safety culture. A positive safety culture is critical to the long-term success of any program by assuring participation, assessment, and follow-up. The transit industry as a whole suffers from a historically punitive culture where employees do not always feel comfortable speaking up because they expect some form of disciplinary action in response. Metro recognizes that we must create an environment where employees feel encouraged and supported when they have safety concerns, while balancing the need for accountability and proper decision-making. Our efforts with MITRE are going to start with assessing our safety culture. This multifaceted approach has already begun with interviews with both management and labor leadership. Our survey is being developed with the input of our labor partners as well as a number of focus groups, and it's projected to launch in Q1 of fiscal year 23. Those focus groups are in the planning phases to provide context and deeper information to the survey results, which will enable us to target improvement initiatives throughout the organization in both a meaningful and measurable manner. The outcome of assessing our safety culture will be the establishment of WMATA's safety culture baseline against MITRE's safety culture maturity model. This yardstick will clearly indicate to everyone exactly where we are when it comes to safety culture maturity and will help inform the actions we need to take to continuously improve our culture. As we progress along the spectrum, we'll continue to develop improvements to the specific dimensions of safety culture and take action to increase the consistency of the maturity of our culture throughout the overall organization. Approximately 24 months later, the assessment will be taken again, enabling us to assess the progress that we've made against the original baseline and to validate the results of the survey. Metro's already begun the work of developing our plan to progress the path forward by initiating the formation of a joint labor management team to oversee the process of the assessment and to evaluate options to improve our voluntary safety reporting programs. We will provide updates as we receive information that will guide our action planning and decision-making to the board. I'm now happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Teresa, thank you again for another excellent presentation. The depth and quality of these building blocks are quite encouraging, and we really appreciate hearing about them. Ms. Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. My question is about slide 10. This is all great. Like, yes, we need to get a baseline and then be able to measure progress, because how long has WMATA been talking about, like needing a safety culture, and we're working on building a safety culture. Like, we got to do it, and we got to be able to figure out how far we have to go and see signs of progress. Are we going to have like an external communications plan on this? And is this something, when you say like it will tell everyone, do you mean literally everyone?
I do. So one of the cornerstones of our SMS is transparency. And I firmly believe, as does the leadership at Metro, that we must be willing to face the hard and uncomfortable truths about our culture in order to inform its transformation and move forward. When we receive the results of the survey, we will be communicating them widely, not only disseminating the information internally, but also talking externally and developing, as part of our SMS, a plan that includes tactical actions to support strategies to improve our safety culture. And we'll be regularly communicating the results of those actions and our progress on implementing changes, and telling both internal and external parties about our journey, which will include positive actions and wins, as well as struggles and opportunities for us to continuously improve and course correct.
I love that. And I think that, you know, the public, like super broadly, WMATA's customers more specifically, and then kind of leaders across sectors who care about and need WMATA, you know, they need this transparency. So I appreciate that. I know that MITRE's done a lot of consulting in the aviation industry, and that's a transportation industry with like an incredible safety record. So is this like analogous to, you know, like is this MITRE's recommendations like based on what they've done there, or is that the general idea here?
So we performed some extensive benchmarking when we developed our SMS implementation and safety strategy. We visited a number of industries that had remarkable success with implementing SMS. Aviation, of course, being one of the primary drivers, but also healthcare, as well as pipeline. We spent a lot of time talking to agencies that had worked on improving their culture. We spoke with regulators as well. And many of them ultimately led us to MITRE. And what we found in studying the journeys and experiences of other industries that had achieved tremendous success improving their safety record was that an informed culture that included advanced data analytics and utilization of AI and machine learning and effective data mining was what really was the differentiator in achieving their unparalleled successes. So when we began our journey with MITRE, we met with them to explore opportunities and understand how their skill sets could support our end goals. MITRE will be using the processes and tools that they developed for other modes of transportation and other industries to help us solve our problems through a customized process that includes looking sort of at the prism of rail transit. So it'll be adapting and evolving MITRE's tools and instruments for use in the transit industry.
I did not know that about the healthcare and pipeline industry. That is so interesting. This is really helping me understand what it, you know, kind of what's the next level down after like, oh, we need to build a culture of safety. I really appreciate that we're taking the time to like spell this out and get the capacity to do this and to measure while we're doing it. This is cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Ms. Klein.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, working on my buttons here. There we go. I have a question regarding the Joint Labor Management Committee that's mentioned. I don't remember what slide number it was. Is that the same thing that is now part of federal law that was required in the new infrastructure bill? I know there was a safety committee mandated in there, I think focused on bus, but I'm not sure.
It will be. So we had independently taken action before the infrastructure bill to form that joint labor management committee, and we've compared our plan against the requirements of the bill and believe that they are largely compatible. So we've made sure that we're aligned with that, and we're actually going to expand the responsibility of that committee beyond what's just required in the bill to also include the feedback on our voluntary safety reporting program.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. And can you tell me a little more about the timing? Because on the slide, it says basically March 22 to July 23, which is a long time to set up a committee.
So the membership of the committee is currently being vetted and appointed. We have a charter. We've had a number of introductory meetings with our labor leaders. The July 2023 date is meant to mark the deadline as required by the infrastructure bill. So we'll be submitting to stakeholders a letter report of what we've done to comply with those requirements, and also aligns to the beginning of our new fiscal year, within which that committee will vet and approve safety goals and targets. So the committee will be formed and fully functioning. We are beginning some of those preliminary meetings and reviews now, but we'll have the output that complies with the deadlines associated with the infrastructure bill all completed by that July date.
And was the charter prepared by labor and management together, or how did that process happen? Because if the charter happens first and then the committee membership is appointed, like what were the conversations that led to that happening?
So the charter is still being finalized.
Okay.
We had to go back and make some revisions to it as a result of interpretations that we had requested with regard to the infrastructure bill, but it is being jointly developed.
Okay. And so you do expect the committee to be functioning before that July 23rd, 2023? Okay, well, I was actually really excited to see that requirement in the law. I'm interested that you had already thought of it before it got in the law, which is great, because I think it's really helpful to have a formal structure in which, and I believe it was equal representation that's required from employees and management in that committee. And I know that some other transit agencies have already gotten those committees set up. So I encourage you to kind of keep that process moving and keep that kind of partnership going with the labor representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Impastato, could you go a little bit more into some detail about how you talked about, working with employees about safety culture and communicating these issues. Could you go a little more into depth about how that sort of plays out? I mean, if it's best illustrated by an example or something. I'm really curious, because this is something that, we've heard many times now from you and some others, communication and really driving, that change. How does it sort of take place on a, day-to-day or weekly basis, for you all?
So I would say right now, our employees, by and large, feel fairly comfortable reporting conditional issues. Our employees feel fairly comfortable reporting risks and hazards based upon environmental conditions that they encounter or that are present in the operating environment and our customers may encounter. They are fairly comfortable calling the safety hotline, emailing the safety hotline, and speaking directly with the safety team to identify those concerns and issues, and working with us to address immediate fixes and long-term solutions. I would say, assessing the maturity of that process, it's fairly stable, fairly consistent. And while it can, of course, be improved, I think that it represents a foundational level of maturity. Where I've observed struggles at Metro are in the reporting of operational incidents, where employees have made mistakes or misinterpretations that have led to an escape from a procedure or a deviation from a prescribed process that resulted in an unintended outcome. Metro's employees are not uniformly comfortable self-reporting these types of concerns or issues. We have had in some of the departments in which we've implemented just culture principles, the marked improvement in employees feeling supported, empowered, and comfortable to report mistakes that they've made in order to better inform investigations to identify opportunities to prevent those mistakes from being made by the next person, where the next manifestation of that mistake may result in an incident that has consequence. What we've seen is we have seen, specifically in the Rail Operations Control Center, employees that are willing to report mistakes that they've made by virtue of confusing instructions, or by virtue of a process that is difficult to implement or understand, or an engineered system that allows an escape. We've received reports about all of those concerns and issues, and we've been able to work together with the involved employees and their management team to make changes to those processes, to enhance communications, and to build a more resilient program for executing safety critical tasks. The balance of the Metro organization has not yet reached that level of maturity, and we are still working through our SMF efforts to enhance those opportunities for employees to feel comfortable reporting mistakes that they make so that we can safeguard against a repeat in the future.
Do you have different kinds of communications or different types of training or different types of programs for various levels of, say, frontline workers versus, workers on the floor doing certain tasks versus, management, if you will? Are they one and the same, or are there different levels of programs and communications and emphasis or emphasis on what they should or shouldn't be doing?
So we have made available to folks targeted communications that provide relevant examples to the scope of their daily responsibility.
Okay.
So when we're communicating with our frontline employees, we're emphasizing exemplars that are germane to the duties that they perform. We're also taking an opportunity to overlay an additional avenue of communication and explanation with our management workforce, who serve a dual function here. One, they could be individual reporters themselves, but also they could be the individuals who receive reports or who are responsible for making changes to the environment to empower good decisions. So we're overlaying some additional supplemental training to our management team to inform and explain to them that while they are obligated to address safety concerns and issues, they also have additional responsibility to empower the reporting of their subordinate employees.
Okay. And do you feel that, put you a little bit on the spot here, do you feel that, say, supervisors on up, directors or managers, whatever title designation it is, are doing their own proper reporting and asking the right questions to the people that they are working with on a daily basis? And is that information flowing up to the appropriate people at, say, even the EMT or general manager level? How is that working?
So I think we have a fair amount of variation in the consistency and maturity with which those horizontal and vertical integrations of information exchange occur. I can say that there are notable bright spots where we've observed leaders throughout the organization really embrace and embody the principles of just culture, learning culture, and informed culture. But we've also observed some areas that require significant attention and are at the very beginning of the maturity model.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll close with one final comment or question or request. A third-party data broker. Can you expand on the importance of that concept?
Absolutely. When we benchmarked against the industry-leading confidential close call reporting programs in aviation and in heavy rail, what they told us was that one of the critical keys to their success was as they were building their cultural improvements as a tool to bridge gaps in the trust between reporting employees and management, it became critically important that they establish a neutral third party, wholly independent of the management structure of the organization, who would receive these reports and then appropriately review and redact identifying information in those reports before the reports were turned into management. So that would provide a level of confidence for the reporting employees that they wouldn't be identified and therefore could not be subject to any type of sanction. And as time went on, as employees began reporting and the agencies began to have opportunities to make significant improvements, the reporting rates skyrocketed to the point where employees were regularly utilizing this mechanism to report concerns and issues and mistakes that they had made for the betterment of the safety risk profile of the global organization. So we've sought to emulate that at Metro, and we've engaged with an independent third party that holds and mans all of the electronic data, as well as all of the phone call data. None of that is sent to Metro in its raw form. We only see the information from the third party after it's been appropriately reviewed to ensure anonymity and confidentiality.
Thank you so much. Again, very encouraging. And thank you for another excellent presentation. Seeing no hands, with no further business to come before the committee, we will stand adjourned. And I'll turn the floor back over to Chair Smedberg, who has a request for the board to meet in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsection C, personnel or labor issues, including discussion of labor contracts and labor negotiations, consideration of interviews of candidates for employment, and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, or resignation of individuals, and D, contractual or other matters, including confidential or proprietary concerns, or the investment of public funds where discussion in public would adversely affect the financial interest of WMATA, and F, safety and security matters where premature release would compromise public safety. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Babers. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today.